Welcome. This is Path to the Pinnacles for 2023. I'm Taylor Cortland and I'm joined by Digby Beecham. Hello to you, Diggers.
Good morning to you, TC.
We thought we'd kick off a look with spring, very much on our doorstep now here in WA. We'd kick it off with a look at the 3-year-olds and try to identify a couple that people might have missed throughout the winter months and try and identify some that might be able to make a splash during the Pinnacles.
Now, there is a caveat on this. We've settled on 10 3-year-olds, TC, and there is a long list, and I'm sure we've left out some that people will have an opinion on, but they must have had 2 runs or less prior to the start of this campaign upcoming. Now, we are going to feature Augment, who resumes on Saturday in a 3-year-old 1,200 metre race. She's only had the 2 starts. She's shown a lot of ability, as have the other 9, and as I said, there's some unraced horses, other horses who have gone to the race and won races, but we've just focused on these 10 who we think have a future.
Absolutely. Super Smink, Live to Tell. We know they're going to be stars. They're exposed. So we've tried to dig a little bit deeper and in no particular order. We'll kick it off with Written Melody, trained by Grant and Alana Williams. On debut, it was just a midweek win, but it was very impressive.
It was indeed. Now, this is a daughter, as you'd expect, with a name of Written Melody, written by a Lonro mare. Now, she was a 2-year-old winner on debut in early July over a 1,000 metre trip at Belmont, and she won by more than 2 lengths. Now, she trialled up well prior to that debut effort, but she was very, very strong over the final 200 metres in that race and was the only runner in that race to break 35 seconds for her final 600 metres on a soft 6 surface. So she looks precocious, she looks a runner. She was a $60,000 yearling purchase, and off what we've seen previously, Grant and Alana look to have a wonderful battery of 3-year-olds, and Written Melody is one of those.
If I was to pin you down, Written Melody, grand final during the Pinnacles, Placid Arc, is that where we're looking?
I would think so, and a lot of these 3-year-olds that we are focusing on, TC, are going to be aimed up, you would think, at a Placid Arc, which is worth $500,000.
If we take a look at another 3-year-old filly, Taropa can fit very much in that basket, that Placid Arc basket, trained by Vernon Brockman, another debut winner over the 1,000 metres back in July at Belmont. Fought off a really talented one from the Steve Wolf stable in Brave Spirit. We know the family very well here in WA, half-sister to Ravelli and La Farola, amongst a couple of others. I have written down Placid Arc horse all over.
Yeah, agree, and I'd like to think maybe a Placid Arc and then hopefully gets to a Burgess Queen, 1,400 metres. We know her siblings have got out to that trip and a little bit further than that, and you're right, she is from a WA family we know particularly well, out of the Rock of Gibraltar mare Europa Point. Couldn't have been more impressive on debut, albeit the margin was only ahead, but you're right, TC, she beat a horse by the name of Brave Spirit from the Steve Wolf yard, who himself looks particularly smart. She was held up slightly in the straight before she picked up when presented with a run, took that run and got to the line nicely. As I said, she hails from a WA family. Historically, they've got better when they've got a little bit older. 3 years and older has been when they've come into their own, and I'm expecting this Toronado filly to do the same. And she cost a lot of money. She was a $230,000 yearling purchase. She's 1 for 1, and she has a future as well.
Not too many 2-year-olds on debut are able to find traffic and then really pick up through traffic.
Exactly right. So she's a watch going forward.
Also, 2-year-olds on debut don't often settle last, come down the outside and run past an entire field, and that's exactly what 3-year-old gelding Elite One for Simon Miller did earlier on this year.
Yeah, son of Ducimus, and they're all the same. You see them at the sales and they're strong, sprinting types, and this fellow produced a booming finish to win on debut on a Saturday. So that is a massive tick. Now, I know that Simon has an opinion of this fellow. He trialled up really, really well, and then he went to the races. And what we have seen at Belmont primarily this season, it's been an advantage to be racing on speed. This fellow settled in a rearward position, and he was able to gun down Sass Machine, who then went to the races again on a Saturday at her next start and duly won. So she's a filly with a level of ability, but this fellow, it came in early May also, which I think is important because he was then able to be tipped out and have a good long spell. He'll furnish, he'll come back a better option, you would think, for Simon. I know that he's got an opinion of him. I know off what we've seen, there looks to be a turn of foot there. An $80,000 yearling. As I said, not many horses go and win on debut, and not many horses go and win on debut on a Saturday. That's exactly what Elite One did.
Are we expecting him to be kept to the sprinting trips as well?
I would think that is exactly where you will see him in the Pinnacles.
Breeding suggests that as well. Another 3-year-old filly that we'll take a look at is Keshi Boom from the Grant and Alana Williams stable as well. Was another winner on debut, this time over the 1200 metres in mid-July. This daughter of Spirit of Boom, we know that progeny stays at sprinting trips, and we're starting to form a little bit of a theme here.
Yeah, we are. There's a little bit of X factor about this filly, TC. I loved her trials either side of a spell. She was able to win a trial as a 2-year-old, was tipped out and then came back, and she had a trial down there at Lark Hill. Very, very impressive. Then Grant and Alana elected to take her to the races, and this was in mid-July, and she was presented with a soft 7 surface. It was no impediment over the 1200 metres. You're right in regards to these horses, the progeny of Spirit of Boom, that is, being maybe a little bit suspect at, trips beyond 1200 metres. A soft 7, it was a testing day in regards to the ground, but she got through it brilliantly, and despite there being a little bit of a nervous moment whilst William got her into clear air, she savaged the line, winning by 1.5 lengths. She looks a natural, has done from day one, and look, she was $120,000 yearling, so clearly there were a few on her, and clearly she was a nice type as a young horse, and off what we've seen, 1 start, 1 win, she is a follow.
Quick question without notice. Keshi Boom raced, won in mid-July. Elite One, who we've just spoken about, raced and won in early May. Do you take much into that consideration heading into the Pinnacles with Elite One getting a little bit more of a spell?
I think it's important for horses to have a spell, and they weren't overtaxed, either of them. They had 1 run. He won on a Saturday. She's won on a Wednesday on a soft 7. I think he might have been on a 5, and I think just perhaps right here, right now, and we're about to have a chat about a couple of other horses, or certainly one horse that featured in that Elite One race, being Masamune, Sass Machine. Maybe the form line from what we saw with Elite One is perhaps a little bit stronger of the form line surrounding Keshi Boom, but she is a filly that I do like.
3-year-old filly Woburn Gold is 2 for 2. Now, Colin Webster is on record post-race after a most recent start saying that she's probably more of an autumn proposition. We've kept her in this list because things can change. Yeah, she's clearly got the ability to measure up.
Sorry, TC, exactly right. And looking at the Racing Australia website, there is active alongside her name at the moment. So off that, I take it she's still in work or ticking over. It hasn't been spelled. I'll stand corrected there. But she's a filly who I want to be with, and I want to monitor really, really closely, as I suspect you do as well, TC, whether she races in the Pinnacles or whether she races in the autumn, because she looked like from the trials that she was well above average. She went to Belmont as a very early season 3-year-old, and she bolted in by 2.5 lengths over 1,000 metres. Admittedly, she was afforded a lovely run in transit. She started an $8 chance on that occasion, and 10 days later she went around on a Saturday as an easing $3.30 pop. There was a lot of money on that occasion for Lord Lala, but she beat a couple of handy ones, won by 1.5 lengths, and even before that victory, the cackle around Ascot was the stable had a really, really high opinion of her. You can understand why. She's a professional filly, only cost the $30,000. She's 2 for 2. There's been interest from Eastern States connections surrounding her. She is most definitely a filly that you can follow wherever she goes.
Moving on to 3-year-old gelding, just a bit of press from the Michael Lane stable. Now, this horse has gone to the trials, had tongues absolutely wagging. Unfortunately, now hasn't placed on debut, but things clearly didn't go right.
No, he buck jumped soon after the gates opened there. So there's a genuine excuse in regards to just a bit of press, but you go on what you see and the cackle around him, and it's a lot of cackle. There's a lot of cackle surrounding this horse. Now, he is the half-brother to Ranveer, who is a Metropolitan winner over there on a Saturday in Melbourne. He only cost the $50,000 as a yearling, but Michael has been nice and patient with him. Now, he was making his debut as a late season 2-year-old. He went to Lark Hill on the 12th of June, and that was over 400 metres and trialled brilliantly, and then he went there over the 950 and broke the clock and did it under his own steam. It was an armchair ride for Chris Parnham on that occasion. He was back to odds on debut, and things didn't go right, yet he still ran 5th. He was last turning for home, and he ran 5th. He was beaten a fair way, but he was not entitled to get where he did at the end in that race. Off of what we saw at the trials, he has a high cruising speed, he's got a lovely action, and he's going to win races. There's no question about that. Is it a bit too soon? I'd say no, because of what he did at the trials, as a 2-year-old. He is most definitely worth watching going forward.
Have we found a WA Guineas horse yet?
Wouldn't be a surprise if this fellow, he's by Press Statement. And the Press Statement won a Caulfield Guineas, and he He won it in very, very emphatic fashion. So it wouldn't be a shock if this fellow gets beyond the 1,200 metres.
3-year-old colt, Masamune. Now, we've got 10 on the list. I'd argue this guy probably packs the most X factor. We don't really know where his ceiling is because he's done a fair bit wrong in his 2 starts, and the last of them coming up in the middle of May. He's raw, but look out if he puts it together.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know where his ceiling is. I know that Darren McAuliffe's really bullish about him, and Darren can form an opinion on his horses, and justifiably so. And this fellow, look, on debut, it was a run that had to be seen to be believed. He veered outwards quite sharply around that 600 metre mark. He travelled wide, he wobbled around the corner, and he was only beaten 2.5 lengths into 4th behind Elite One. Now, we've referenced Elite One in this segment, and deservedly so. Elite One is a horse with enormous upside. I'd argue the same with this fellow as well. There's something there. He still hasn't learned what it's all about. It's still very new. After he ran that 4th, he then went to another Saturday race a fortnight later. He raced handy to the speed, and he was beaten by Sass Machine. So the form lines around this horse are good. Sass Machine, Elite One. I don't know. I just don't know where he gets to, what distance he races over. He's a half to Nigata. So Nigata, call her what you will. She's won over a trip. He's by Universal Ruler. We know that they can get over a little bit of ground. It wouldn't be a shock if this fellow was running around in the WA Guineas. He might follow the traditional path all the way through. I'm really, really excited about Masamune. 2 starts. It's a 4th and it's a 2nd. Both have been on a Saturday. He has got X Factor with a capital X.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to make that point. He is out of a Testarossa mare, but just strikes me as a Guineas horse over and over, where he can gain his feet and get his feet underneath him and then really produce the turn of foot that I think we know that he's got.
It wouldn't be a shock if he went there on a Saturday upon resumption and blew away his opposition.
Speaking of X Factor, 3-year-old filly from the Simon Miller stable, Augment. She absolutely screams X Factor, and she did that after a win on debut where she was able to win by 3 lengths.
Yeah, she did, TC. And look, she's an Exceed and Excel. And we know that the Exceed and Excel progeny is 2- and 3-year-olds indeed, as 4- and 5-year-olds. They're equine ATMs. They are very, very efficient. And this filly couldn't have been more impressive on debut. As you said, it was over 1,200 metres. It was as a 2-year-old, but she beat On Patrol. We saw what On Patrol was able to do last weekend at Belmont on a Saturday. Very, very impressive on that occasion. Look, she's a filly who looks to be able to hold a position, you push a button and she accelerates. So she's very, very professional. She has arguably some of the best form lines going around because she, after that debut win, was aimed up at the Group 3 Gimcrack and she ran 3rd behind Live to Tell and Super Smink. Now, they are, without doubt, the best 2-year-olds that we saw last season. She was only beaten half a length on that occasion. She's very, very good. She won a trial recently and she beat Costa Zeta, who was backed off the boards there on Saturday just gone, and duly saluted. He looks a nice horse for Trevor Andrews, and he's an older horse than her, and she was able to beat him despite not getting a lot of clear galloping room. As I said, $180,000 yearling purchase, 2 starts, 1 win, 1/3. She's already stakes play. She's already worth a lot of money, and I suspect she'll be worth a lot more after this campaign.
She might run into Super Smink, but she screams champion fillies to me.
Yeah, she's a lovely filly.
3-year-old gelding, Ripcord. Now, can I make a case to you, Digby? We've taken a look at the Winterbottom market this year.
Yeah.
I don't think we have an out-and-out star sprinter here in WA.
Yes.
Could it be the year for a 3-year-old to have a serious crack at the Winterbottom? And could it be Ripcord?
One of my notes here, Taylor, is who's to say he couldn't end up in a Winterbottom Stakes. So we're singing from the same hymn sheet in regards to Ripcord. And now he's only been to the races twice. He won a Perth Stakes, a listed Perth Stakes off a 400-metre trial.
And was backed.
Absolutely. And Luke Fernie quite bullishly said afterwards, he said, I don't need to put him over 1,000 metres. I know how good he is. Well, he went there over 1,100 metres and did exactly what Luke thought he would do. Excitement machine. And then he went to a Karrakatta plate off the back of that Perth Stakes win. Yes, he ran 3rd. Yes, he was beaten a distance. But who beat him? Super Smink and Live to Tell, the two preeminent 2-year-olds of last season. He was doing it all on raw ability. He's a bit like Masamune, but maybe a little bit more advanced mentally than Masamune. But like Masamune, he has got a ceiling which is extremely high. Now, I believe there was overseas interest in regards to Ripcord. He still finds himself in the stables of Luke Fernie. He's Luke's headline act, and he is a headline act worth following. He's very, very exciting, this fellow. 2 starts, 1 win in listed grade, 1 third in Group 2 company. He's already won $126,200. He cost just $40,000. I say just $40,000 as a weanling. What's to say we don't see him racing the older horses, and what's to say he doesn't race the older horses and hold his head up particularly high?
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, of the list of 10, 3-year-old filly Petula, trained by Simon Miller, 2 from 2, was a winner over the 1,300 metres, and on that occasion beat Ancient Guidance. Through the winter months, Ancient Guidance is probably the best form line to get a line through some of these gallopers. Breeding suggests out of a mare that won twice over 1,000 metres, but Petula's already stepped up as a 2-year-old to the 1,300 metres. So where do we see her best place coming up over the Pinnacles?
Yeah, look, we were umming and ahhing whether we had Petula in the list, and we did settle on the fact that she is deserving of a spot in here. Look, she's a daughter of Nakoni. We know that Simon Miller's had a wonderful affinity with the progeny. She trialled well as a 2-year-old, going back into that maiden run. Now, that was at Ascot in early May, and on that occasion, she was fired to the top by Paddy Carberry despite drawing wide, and she won by 1.5 lengths. It was a very, very professional effort. 10 days later, she went to a set weights and penalties event over the 1,300 metres at Belmont, and as you quite rightly mentioned, Taylor, she was able to hold off Ancient Guidance. The suspicion from the stable on that occasion, I can tell you, is that maybe she was coming to the end of her campaign, and she was quickly tipped out. She was entered for a Wednesday race after that Saturday race, but they elected to go to the Saturday, and I think it was a very, very wise move because the petrol tank was reading empty. She's had a good spell. She's come back. I would think that she is going to be better again now as a 3-year-old. She was only a $30,000 weanling purchase. She's 2 for 2. One of those wins was in a maiden, admittedly, but the other one, as you said, was beating Ancient Guidance, who is now a multiple Saturday winner for Ryan Hill. So the form lines around her, hard to knock.
That's the 10 3-year-olds with 2 starts or less that we've nailed down. Give me 2 you're most excited to see.
I would think that it's a really hard question. I would think that Ripcord's one. Of what we've seen, Ripcord, and I can't get away from the fact that Keshi Boom, there's something about her. I don't know whether it's we don't see many Spirit of Booms over here, and he's done a wonderful job as a sire over there in Queensland. And Woburn Gold. Now, whether we see her in the Pinnacles or not, and sometimes you can say, oh, it's only winter 2-year-old, 3-year-old form. That's right. But what she's done has been ultra, ultra impressive. To be fair, TC, I'd love to own any one of these 10 because they have all got a motor, they're in good yards, and they've proven themselves to have a load of ability. And you would think they're only going to get better as they get a little bit older and they get a little bit more savvy on the game.
I'll throw Taropa in there too. I don't think we see many 2-year-olds find traffic like she did and then able to produce that turn of foot late, so I'm hoping we get to see her headed towards a placid arc, but I'm still sticking with the fact that I think it's a 3-year-old's year. If one of them can really step up, we might be seeing them prominent in a market for the Winterbottom Stakes, but first of all, we might see a few of them in the Max Simmons at Ascot on opening day on October 14th.
6 weeks away before we're back at headquarters, and the Pinnacles aren't that far away as well, so there's a lot to look forward to. Hopefully you've liked our list. If not, please let us know. If you do, please let us know as well. We appreciate all feedback.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.